Welcome. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Society. My name is John Gerber. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a member of this Unitarian Universalist Society and today's worship leader. I'm grateful to share this time with you today. We've arrived at this moment from many different places in our lives to make meaning and create healing in community. We are friends and neighbors, teachers and students, activists and peacemakers. We embrace the diversity among us and widen the circle further, knowing that each of us deserves care and has something to offer. Come serious, come sad, come angry, come glad, come small, come large, come burdened, come light. Come into this place that holds so much and let it hold you just as you are. Your tears, your laughter, your fears, your hopes. Come in with your body and with your heart. Come, let us worship. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. Just as you are welcome here.
My name is Jill Gensler. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a member of this Unitarian Universalist Society and today's worship associate. I invite you to say our congregation's chalice lighting words with me. We light this flame to invite a world of peace where we heal the wounds, where we share what we have with one another, where justice is another word for relationship, and we listen for what love has to say. I invite you to rise in body and spirit, heart and voice, to sing our opening hymn, There Is More Love Somewhere, on the screen and number 95 in the teal hymnal.
So I invite the kids to come forward for Time for All Ages. And anyone young at heart may join us. Hey, look at this. You know what that green thing is? Would you take that for me? Hold it. What do you think that green thing on there is? You know what that is, Laszlo? lichen, right? Very good lichen. So I took this from the front wall of the meeting house this morning, got lichen all over. Don't tell the meeting house committee. I'll put it back. But that's lichen. This is the story of lichen. Once upon a time, a very long time ago, 430 million years to be exact, there lived a little green seaweed colony living happily near the seashore. The little green seaweed loved its warm, well-lit, watery home. But the neighborhood was becoming crowded with each passing week. Big, fast-growing weeds were beginning to shade out the smaller ones, making it difficult for the little green seaweed to grow. And then things got worse. One dreary morning, the little seaweed met a big, brown, aquatic fungus. That's a fungus that lives in the water. "Excuse me," said the fungus, "but I'm about to infect and eat you." "Why would you want to do that?" asked the little green seaweed. "Well," replied the fungus, "it's getting harder and harder to make a living on this part of the seafloor. I normally prefer to eat dead organic matter. But turtles have been devouring my favorite foods before I get my share. With their fishy fins and their crabby claws, these turtles move faster than I can stretch my fungal fingers." "You know," offered the little green seaweed, "I have a similar problem. Beneath these big, big seaweeds, I can't find enough light to grow. They're shading me out, leaving me weak and dark-colored. I'm not as green as I used to be, and I bet I don't taste so good. Are you sure you want to eat me?" But the big brown fungus was hungry, and the little green seaweed was defenseless, so the fungal fingers invaded the little seaweed and began to suck away the living fluids, hanging on to the little seaweed while it ate. Just then there was an earthquake. A portion of the seafloor heaved up, becoming land, and the water drained away. Lots of seaweeds went tumbling back into the ocean, carried along by the water flowing off the rock. But the little seaweed, anchored as it was to the fungus, was left stranded on the rock. "Now what?" asked the seaweed, in desperation, as they had never been out of the water before. "Well," replied the fungus, "I can grow my fungal fingers down to the cracks of this rock until they reach water, and I can just suck up the water while I hang on to the rock. But what am I going to eat? I suppose I ought to eat as much of you as I can before the sun bakes you to a crisp." And the fungus continued sucking the living fluid out of the little seaweed. But in the bright sun, the little seaweed, who was turning green again, was beginning to taste sweeter and sweeter. "Say, you are a sweet little seaweed now that you're green again," said the fungus. "I would like to taste your sweetness forever. It makes me feel kind of sad that I have to kill you." "Yes, I'm feeling sad too. I miss my old life when I had plenty of sunlight," the little, once again now, green seaweed explained. "When I get enough sunlight, I can create lots of sugar through photosynthesis." Suddenly the fungus had an idea. "Hey, little seaweed." "Yes," replied the seaweed. "You know, my fungal fingers can just as easily feed fluids into you as suck them out." The little seaweed felt a glimmer of hope shimmer through its bright green gelatinous skin. "Tell me more," the seaweed begged. "Well, if I give you water and nutrients, can you guarantee me a continuous supply of sugar?" "Oh, yes," replied the little seaweed. "In this bright sunlight, I can produce much more sugar than I can possibly use myself." "I think we have a deal," said the fungus. And thus began the most fruitful collaboration of all time, the intimate partnership of a seaweed and a fungus to form an entirely new life form on Earth that today we call a lichen, an interconnected community of formerly separate beings. And you can find all kinds of lichens on stone walls and rocks and trees, and well, just about everywhere you look. Be sure and look around the meeting house today when you leave. All of you. As our RE leaders take the religious education students downstairs, I invite you to sing and rise and sing the song, Life is the Greatest Gift of All, number 331 in the hymnal and on the screen. The home I grew up in was divided with respect to both politics and religion, much like our nation today. But unlike our nation, the household of my youth was divided but not divisive. Our home on the North Shore of Long Island was a two-family house with my grandparents residing on the ground floor and my parents, two brothers, and me upstairs. My grandmother, Jenny, was a die-hard Rockefeller Republican from New York. My father was a dedicated Mayor Ed Kelly Democrat from the south side of Chicago. They didn't agree on many political questions, but they never expressed animosity towards each other. The first presidential election I can remember was between Richard Nixon and John Kennedy in 1960. My family was evenly divided. I can remember it was something of a family joke that although they knew their votes would cancel each other out, they all went to vote on election day in good spirits. My maternal grandfather was from an Irish Catholic potato famine clan in New York City. He had been disowned by his family and excommunicated by the Catholic Church for marrying my Episcopalian grandmother and allowing my mom to be raised outside of the true faith. My Roman Catholic father and my Episcopalian mother could not be married in the sanctuary of the Catholic Church because of their so-called mixed marriage. Somehow the family navigated these divisions with grace and good humor. I suspect there was more tension around the politics and religion in my household than I was privy to. But when I told my parents I intended to marry my Jewish high school girlfriend, they were supportive and helped me find a hippie rabbi from Greenwich Village to lead the ceremony. That was then. Today, we are deluged with a steady stream of political, ethnic, and religious animosity, an us versus them culture. My upbringing didn't prepare me for the rancor we experience in the public arena today. I'm disturbed when I watch the news. All I can see is anger, blame, ridicule, judgment, derision, rage. It seems socially acceptable today to condemn, even to hate people from a different political, religious, or ethnic background. And there's certainly no space for the sort of collaboration demonstrated by that slippery green seaweed and that big brown fungus, wondering how they were ever going to survive, stranded on a rock. How did those two distinct species ever find the humility and grace to work together to not only save their own lives, but to create an entirely new life form, lichens, which by every measure has been wildly successful? You know, I've shared this story with my students for many years in the great hope that they might come to see the value of cooperation over competition. Some maybe do. Others probably just want to know if it's going to be on the test. But my appreciation for this life-affirming story took a giant leap forward when I read about lichens in Robin Wall Kimmerer's now classic book, Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants. Listen to this. She writes, scientists were interested in how the marriage of alga and fungus occurs. When they put the two together in the laboratory and provided them with the ideal conditions for both, they ignored each other. It was only when scientists created harsh and stressful conditions that the two would turn toward each other and begin to cooperate. It was the extreme stress of being thrown up on a rock that resulted in cooperation, not just across political, ethnic, or religious lines, but between two very different species. How did they ever communicate across the us-them green-brown divide? I wonder, was it because being creatures of nature, they could intuitively sense the interconnectedness of all things, much like people from indigenous cultures do today? Sherry Mitchell, the indigenous author of the powerful book, Sacred Instructions, Indigenous Wisdom for Living Spirit-Based Change, reminds us that, quote, we all belong to one another, and we are responsible for each other's well-being. We Unitarian Universalists call this widening the circle of concern, as outlined by the 2020 UUA study by that same name. But how can we widen our circle to include those voters who, for example, supported a presidential candidate who is now actively dismantling American democracy, militarizing our cities, erasing efforts at inclusion, and arresting and deporting the most vulnerable among us? How could we be anything but full of anger? Father Richard Rohr, a modern-day Franciscan prophet, wrote in his latest book, The Tears of Things, quote, life disappoints and hurts us all. And the majority of people, particularly men, do not know how to react, except as a child does, with anger and rage. We are good at anger and rage. Anger at these injustices is surely understandable and may indeed get us off the couch. But Sherry Mitchell reminds us anger will not help us to, quote, collectively dream a new world into being with gentleness and reverence. She asks us to create space for the heart-to-heart communication, understanding, and empathy that has the potential to transform us and them into all of us. How do we begin this difficult work? Father Rohr teaches that just below the surface of anger is a deeper emotion, sadness. He suggests that after the initial flare-up of anger in response to yet another ice raid, for example, we should dig deeper into our own feelings. He offers us the counterintuitive step of sharing our vulnerability with others in the form of tears. He writes, mere rage will not change anything. Tears often will. First by changing the one who weeps, and then by moving others. Of course, we must respond to the abuses of social injustice, and anger makes us feel powerful, at least for a short time. But I wonder if the deep work of transformation needed today, and in fact has been needed in this country for a long time, would not be better served by a surrender to shared grief in the face of injustice and violence. Sherry Mitchell writes, my group, Native Americans, have suffered an unrecognized Holocaust in this country. The brutal genocide of Native peoples is hard to acknowledge for many, especially for those who have inherited value from the loss and destruction that occurred here. This truth has been largely ignored by those of us of European descent who live, work, and worship today on stolen land. Mitchell and others point out that the unhealed grief caused by European settlers in what we now call North America, and the violence that followed, affects us still today. She explains, we are all carrying grief, a deep, unimaginable grief that impacts how we connect with one another. It is a cumulative emotional and spiritual wound that results from the history of violence that we all share. Mitchell teaches that the history of violence is carried forward today in the form of ancestral trauma in the bodies of Native peoples who suffered unimaginable harm, and of white Americans whose ancestors caused the harm, including some of us who continue to benefit from the harm. I had the privilege of attending a weekend workshop organized by an intertribal coalition of Native peoples last spring at Woolman Hill in Deerfield. Native as well as non-tribal peoples like myself were asked to remember the pain of our ancestors. The feeling that dominated the weekend was not anger, but grief, followed by a resolve to learn from each other and do better. I believe we have much to learn from indigenous traditions, as Native peoples in this country have had a long time to learn how to survive heartbreak. We know that both heartbreak and rage can exist side by side within each one of us, but the hard work of social justice and healing might be more successful if it was motivated by shared grief, grounded in love, rather than rage based in fear. It was fear-based rage, after all, that brought us the violent white men in the red MAGA hats. We have a choice. As Unitarian Universalists, we have made the claim that we side with love. And I try. Nevertheless, my immediate instinctual reaction to everything from the news of the arrest and deportation of innocent people to the guy I saw last winter in South Florida walking down the aisle of a grocery store wearing a red MAGA hat, and what I imagined was a self-important smirk on his face, well, my reaction may be anger. I'm not suggesting that we deny the fear or bury the anger, but I know that anger aimed at the guy in the grocery store won't erase the culture of white supremacy that dominates politics today. In fact, it might inflame it. On the other hand, following Brené Brown's wise counsel to have the courage to lead with vulnerability, opening myself to feel and express grief, that might result in the heart-to-heart communication and connection, even among people who hold different political views. Anger divides. Shared grief has the potential to connect. And the good news is that everyone gets to experience grief at some time in their lives. Nevertheless, regardless of political affiliation, ethnic or religious background, we get to experience grief. And sharing this grief over all that we have lost, whether that be an election, a dream, an opportunity, or a loved one, may make space for something new to emerge. Most of us who have experienced deep personal loss understand that loss has the potential to crack us open. My own cracked open heart has become softer and more likely to experience empathy and compassion for others since my wife died. Sherry Mitchell teaches that grief and celebration are not only natural, but necessary to a balanced life and a healthy society. The sometimes wild, painful expression of shared sorrow in the form of tears, song, ritual, and stories are a required element of the healing process for individuals and perhaps nations. The feeling that dominates my own understanding of the long history of violence against Native peoples in this land, the land we now call North America, is a deep, deep sadness. And I have the same feeling about our current political situation. This sadness motivates me to march, to sing, to write letters, to donate, to vote, to listen to the viewpoints of others with an open heart, and to cry. Not alone, but together. Personal sadness won't heal the us versus them divide, but if we have the courage to share our grief with each other, we might build a broad enough coalition to make a difference. That slippery green alga and that big brown fungus sacrificed their own bodies to build something new, a lichen. Two separate beings joining together to create an interdependent community of beings. What were they thinking? I don't know. What I do know is that we have all been thrown up on a rock. And I know that evolution is not done with us yet. The emergence of new species and perhaps even new interdependent communities, perhaps beloved communities, is possible. This is not the end of the story. And something, perhaps, just perhaps, something completely surprising and entirely new will emerge tomorrow. May it be so. Amen. Our pastoral prayer today is How to Survive the Apocalypse, written by Sean Parker Dennison. First, learn to listen, not only for enemies around corners in hidden places, but for the faint footsteps of hope and the whisper of resistance. Hone your skills, aim your heart towards kindness, and stockpile second chances. Under the weight of destruction, we will need the strong shelter of forgiveness and the deeper wells that give the sweet water of welcome. We have a place for you. When the world ends, we must not add destruction to destruction, not accept a beggar's bargain to fight death with more death. In order to survive the apocalypse, any apocalypse at all, we have to give up the counterfeit currency of self-sufficiency, the mistaken addiction to competition, and the lie that the last to die has somehow survived. I invite you to remain seated for our meditation hymn, Spirit of Life.
Another world is possible. Each week, we join together in a practice of building a better world in community. We collect an offering, and we split it with an outside organization to help us remember that we can't make the world a better place on our own. Half of the money collected in our offering today supports the programs of our congregation. The other half of the money will support Village Light, a volunteer-run organization that brings critical aid to mountain villages in Nepal. Please give generously today in the basket, by text, by check, or through our website, uusocietyamherst.org/donate. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
We're about to sing our closing song. You're all welcome to stay right where you are, to know that you are held in the love of this congregation, or you're welcome to rise and move into a circle along the outer aisle. Place your hands over your heart or reach out and hold hands of someone near you and sing our closing song. We almost forgot. It's important to remember this world is ending. We cannot stop it. And only if we find we are the same angel and human, only if we find our common hope will it begin again. Go in peace.